What's up, Lost Boys? Here we are with another fantasy recap video for week 14. Let's get right into it because we got a lot of stuff to talk about. The fantasy playoffs are here early this year, guys. Last week was crazy. We had so many games that changed the outcome of the season. We're going to get right into it right now. First, we're going to start with Josh and Denny. All Josh had to do was win this game, and he pretty much would have clinched his spot. Denny beat him earlier in the year. Boom. Denny comes out, scores the most points in the league this week. It was one of his best weeks of the year. His guys performed, his quarterbacks performed. Lamar finally came around. Baker Mayfield did really good for him. Josh, on the other hand, he had Justin Jefferson. He had Nico Collins. He had Devontae Adams. He had Amon-Ra St. Brown. They combined for about 11 points. That's fantasy in a nutshell. Justin Jefferson misses 8 straight weeks. The week that he got injured, he cost his team. This week he comes back, he plays one quarter, gets injured. Justin Jefferson, the only first-round pick this year to get hurt, and officially a monster bust for Josh. He loses to Denny this week. Next game, we're going to go with Tim versus Cass. What a freaking game this was last night. We were all on the edge. Everyone in the league is rooting for Cass. Cass is in the playoffs. Let him have his spot. We don't want any controversy. Tim is battling with him. This game looked over after before the 3 o'clock games. Cass was going to blow Tim out. Justin Herbert breaks his finger, gets Cass 1. Tim suddenly is projected right there. They got a game. Going to the Monday night games, it's pretty much Tua versus Jordan Love and Derrick Henry. Now, they happen to both be awful. So we're sitting there in the fourth quarter, both games. I'm sure everyone was watching, but for the ones that weren't watching it, back and forth penalties, turnovers. Jordan Love had it. Tua had it in the red zone. It just happened to go where Jordan Love got the touchdown. Tua handed it off to Mostert. 2 red zone drives in a row. Miami was getting ready to score. It could have gone to Tua. Went to Mostert. They kicked it off. Titans turned it over immediately again. Tua got it back in the red zone. They gave it to Mostert again. So Tua didn't get any touchdowns there. Could have saved the game for Tim. Cass ends up pulling away with the Jordan Love touchdown. Derrick Henry did pretty good. So Cass takes the dub in that one. Big loss for Tim. That one half a point, was it like about an 8-yard loss that Tim had against Ryan about 4 weeks ago? It's looming right now because he could be almost in the playoffs. But monster game. Next, Justin and Llama. Justin's team's awful. Llama smoked him. Huge victory for Llama. Ryan needed to win to stay in the hunt. He did. Next, Jace versus Cal. Jace just needed to win. He's in. He's got the most points in the league by far. Cal, terrible team, and he wins. He beat Jace, of all people. Couldn't believe it, and that's with Patrick Mahomes having a terrible game. So Cal takes a huge upset this week. Could reverberations run for the playoffs. Cal takes down Jace. Who would have thought that one? And then the biggest game of the week was Pat versus Matt. Playoff versus playoff. Pat fighting for his playoff life. The reason Pat's fighting for his playoff life, he couldn't afford to lose because his points are so low. He gets a dub. It didn't look like Lawrence was going to play. He had Christian Kirk out, and yet he comes around. He beats Matt by 12 points. His boys freaking came in, somehow scored 149 points. I mean, Mitchell Trubisky started his week off really good with 20 points somehow, and instead he got 15, 17. Big thing is kicker. Dallas kicker, 22 points. Like, kickers, that Cass was bitching about kickers. I love Pat's response in the text chain. But anyway, Pat takes down Matt this week. So those were the games for this week. Now, the crazy thing, we're going to look at the standings and look at next week's games. Okay, standings after this week's games. You have Cass. He's in. He's 10-4. He's second most points. He's clinched. So Cass is pretty much clinched. He's the number 1 seed, no matter what. But now it gets crazy. You have 3 playoff spots that are open right now. You have 4 teams that are 8-6. You also have 2 teams that are 7-7. Okay, so there's 6 teams fighting for 3 spots. They all have a chance. Okay, we're gonna start with Jace. He's 8-6. He has the most points in the league. He plays Josh this week. Insane. Brothers Grimm. Josh versus Jason for a playoff spot. Now, luckily for Jace, if you're doing the quick little math and all this different stuff, even if Jace loses this game, I think he's guaranteed a playoff spot. And here's my reasoning. If Jace loses this game, Josh makes it into the playoffs. Okay, so that's a second. That's 2 spots down. Then you know, which you're going to get into a little bit more in detail in just a second. Pat is playing Llama this week. So that's another de facto playoff game. So let's say Jace loses, Josh is in. Then the winner of Pat and Ryan is in. That's 3 spots. Then you have multiple people sitting at 8 and 7. Okay? Jace would be 8 and 7. If Tim wins, he's going to be 8 and 7. If Learning Computers wins, he's going to be 8 and 7. And if Ryan wins, then Pat will fall to 8 and 7. Okay, so that would be 4 teams at 8 and 7 for that 4th playoff spot. Jace crushes them all in points. He's 150 points ahead of Learning Computer. So no matter what, if Jace loses, he falls to 8 and 7 because Pat and Ryan play each other, who are the only other 8 and 6 teams. There can only be the best possible record that can tie Jace's 8 and 7 as well. So Jace has clinched. I'm calling it now. Unless he scores 0 points this week, Jace is in. So we really have, Josh has to win. Josh has to beat Jace to get in. Obviously, the winner of Ryan and Pat is in, and then there could be a ton of tiebreakers. I mean, so I already mentioned Josh and Jace. That's the scenario for that one. Then you have Tim versus Barreto. Tim is still in the mix. Obviously, he's going to beat Barreto. Barreto's team's terrible. He could play spoiler, but he probably stopped playing. Tim's going to go to 8 and 7. Tim has 1,962 points. That's right behind Josh, and it's behind Matt. So Matt has the most of those 3. So Tim could go up to 9 and 7. Then you have Denny versus Matt. Matt has to win. Like Matt and Tim, they're 7 and 7. They have to win no matter what. Matt has the tiebreaker on points of all the remaining teams other than Jace fighting. So Matt is in a really good spot. If Matt wins, he might be in. Okay? He's playing Denny though, which a couple weeks ago that might have been a free win. Denny's team is looking pretty good right now. Like pretty damn good. So Denny played spoiler this week against Josh. He could play spoiler again next week against Matt. So Josh is rooting for Matt or Denny. Josh is Denny's biggest fan because Matt is the only guy that is ahead of him in points. Okay, so Denny could play spoiler against Matt. Then you have literally best versus worst, Cass versus Cal. We're not even going to worry about that one. Then you have the crazy other playoff game, Pat versus Ryan. Now Pat has to win. He's not going to win any tiebreakers at 8 and 7. His points are too low. Ryan, on the other hand, he could get in with a tiebreaker based on points. Ryan's points, if this is a barn burner, if Pat wins 175 to 170 and Ryan outscores, Josh and Matt by about 30 or 40 points, then Ryan will take over the lead. If Josh loses and Ryan loses, then Pat could get in. There's so many things that could happen based on points. There's a couple things that are crystal clear, I think, in my opinion. Jace is in. He's going to win the tiebreakers. He's in. Second thing that's crystal clear. Matt and Tim have to win, no matter what. Those guys have to win or they're out. And another thing that's crystal clear, Pat has to win. So those things have to win. Other than that, a lot of different things can happen based on how many points are scored by these teams this week. Josh, Matt, Ryan, these guys, Tim, all these guys are fighting not only to win, but to score as many points as they can. So every single decision with their fantasy lineups matters this year. We've never had our league this close. And unfortunately this year it's looking like there's going to be multiple people that are above 500 that don't get into the playoffs. We used to say 7 wins, most of the time would get you in, and 8 wins always got you in. Now, when they added the extra game, that went up 1 game, but very rarely do we have people that are over 500 not get into the playoffs. And this year it's looking like there's going to be multiple people that are over 500 that had good fantasy seasons that just didn't get in. But this next week, it starts on Thursday. We have a Thursday night game this week. It's going to be Raiders versus Chargers this week on Thursday Night Football. So you have some fantasy players in there. You got Eckler, you got Keenan Allen, you got Devontae Adams, you got Josh Jacobs. No Herbert this game. You got uh, Chargers with no Herbert. I don't even know who their quarterback is versus Aiden O'Connell. You got shitty quarterbacks on a Thursday night game, which usually is a low scoring game in the first place. So these fantasy players not looking like the best, but huge fantasy ramifications. Ryan with Eckler, Tim with Jacobs, Josh with Devontae Adams, Roman with Keenan Allen. So tons of these people that are fighting for playoff spots start Thursday. And then this week we have three Saturday games, and they're all pretty good games this week. I know we have. Let me see. Real quick. So what are we doing here? Week of 17, week 13. All right, so Saturday we have Minnesota at Cincinnati. Monster game. You have the Bengals, who have a ton of players playing. You have Vikings, you have Justin Jefferson playing. Maybe Josh Jobs, Jordan Addison for Tim. So that's a Saturday. Pittsburgh versus the Colts. Brian may be playing Jonathan Taylor if he comes back. If not, you got Zach Moss for Tim. Pittsburgh D. Huge game right there. And both of those teams are fighting for playoff spots. Minnesota and Cincinnati also still are fighting for playoff spots. And then you have the biggest one, Denver versus Detroit. This is huge for Chiefs fans because we're rooting for Denver to lose. It's in Detroit. Denver's D has been legit, and Josh pretty much has the entire Detroit offense. So Josh is worried right now. His offense, Goff, Amon-Ra, Gibbs. We just saw what Goff and Amon-Ra did this week. They did terrible. They're going against a stingy Denver D this week. So you have Russell Wilson playing in this game, Cortland Sutton, Javonte Williams. So many things. Before we even get to Sunday, there's going to be a ton of points that are already going to be scored. I can't wait. This is the first time ever we've had it like this in the last week of the season. It's going to be wild to where we literally won't even know the results based on points until after Monday Night Football. I mean, Monday Night Football, you have Philadelphia at Seattle. Those teams have monster players on each team. Pat, Denny, Jace. It's just we won't know our playoffs until about 10:30 on Monday night based on points and based on records. This is going to be crazy. So much fun. It's been an awful NFL season. Refs, all the stuff we've talked about on our text chain, but the fantasy season's been really crazy, and it's going to be an awesome ending, and it's going to be an awesome playoff. So grats to Cass, he's in, and also pretty much grats to Jace, he's pretty much in based on what I think is going to happen. But yeah, I mean, 2 spots remaining, 2 spots left for Pat, for Ryan, for Josh, for Matt, and for Tim. So there's going to be pretty much 3 people that are super disappointed. But I love you guys. Hope everyone stays healthy that's going into the playoffs. Go Chiefs. Let's get back on the victory train this week. And have a good day.